Greetings, everyone. I'm your host, Dr. Mallory D. McCoy, and welcome to the special series, The Telepathy Narrative, Who Gets to Tell the Story? This series exists because of my son. My journey with him, learning him, understanding him, and witnessing the ways he communicates beyond what we've been taught has expanded me in ways I didn't even know were possible. And through this journey, I've had to ask deeper questions about communication, about spirituality, and about truth. During this series, I'll be sharing experiences, reflections, and observations that challenge the way I understand all three. This is not about having all the answers. This is about willing to listen in a different way. So may this moment meet you exactly where you are. May you take what resonates, reflect on what doesn't, and remain open to what is unfolding. And it is so. Let's move forward. So, as I've sat with everything that I experienced in that 1 hour that I spent at Highlands Church and everything that has built up to that moment, another question rose to the surface. Who gets to be the authority in spaces like this? Because what I witnessed wasn't just about telepathy. It was about who gets to define it, who gets to explain it, and who gets to be trusted when they speak on it. And what became very clear to me is that authority in many of these spaces is not always rooted in proximity to the experience. It's rooted in presentation, articulation, structure, and who can build the most convincing case. So as I said before, I heard it stated that this particular work that starts in the Highland Church, that particular story, stood apart from others because of the research behind it and because of the ability to make a case because of the person's background in law. And yeah, I don't agree that makes that story more valid than anybody else's story. I'm a researcher and I know that research is valuable. So I understand that structure and articulation matter, but they are not the same as lived experience. There's a difference between studying something and living it, and there's a difference between observing and being in relationship with what is being observed. And when those two things are placed on the same level, or when observation is elevated above lived experience, we have to ask why. Because the people closest to the experience are not theorizing about it. They're not using the scientific method to prove it. This is not something that needs to be proven because we're living it. I'm living it. We're living it every single day. This is my everyday experience with my son. All of these children and young adults, all of these parents, all of these families navigating this in real time. And yet, in many cases, their voices are not the ones being centered. Their experiences are being filtered. Their experiences are being interpreted. Their experiences are being translated into something that can be presented in a way that's more structured, more digestible, more acceptable to a broader audience, even cloaked in religion. And that's where my discrepancy lies, because at what point does interpretation become ownership? And at what point does explaining something become speaking over the very people who are living it? Again, I am neurospicy. I can identify patterns very well. And this is not a new pattern. Historically, authority has often been given to those who can package information in a way that aligns with established systems, those who can present it with confidence, those whose voices already carry a certain level of built-in credibility, even if they're not the ones closest to the experience, or in the case of my people, it was beat into us. Belief was beat into us. It was a choice between life or death. Believe this or you die. That's how things have come to be adopted by different cultures. So let's talk about religion, because here we are, we're in religious space. When I sat down and said to Pastor Joe, this Bible has been used as a weapon against my people. So you saying that this experience that children and young adults are having needing to be centered around Jesus feels very weaponized. And to have that perspective dismissed in a way that I've experienced before with people who are of the lighter persuasion, aka alabaster people, when they have not confronted something in themselves, then they redirect the conversation to something else. So after I drew attention to the work that I do, my dissertation work around Black girls navigating predominantly white spaces, my business that caters to helping with identity development with Black girls navigating predominantly white spaces, and then my own experience of being forced into different spaces simply because of the predominant experience in my experience, which was the white experience. He had to rush to go off to service, but before that, he love bombed me with compliments, and then he prayed for me and then rushed away from the conversation. So that's what I've experienced with people in authority who have not done their work, who have not moved through having empathy for other people's vantage points. Not to say that Pastor Joe is not empathetic, but I'm saying that in that particular moment, when I'm presenting yet another vantage point of this, you're saying this has to be wrapped up in Jesus. And I'm saying for other people who are experiencing this, who may not be wrapped up in Jesus or have been a victim of the weaponization of Christocentrism, which I talk about in a former episode of what Christocentrism is, it can't be wrapped up in Jesus. So what's another explanation? Are you willing to open yourself up to another explanation? And that's where my discrepancy lies. And so we have to be honest about all of these things, because that pattern doesn't disappear just because we're talking about something spiritual. It doesn't disappear because the intention is to help. It follows us into these spaces. So when I hear that a story stands apart because it's been researched, because it's been structured, and because it's been argued effectively, I have to ask, what about the families who've been living this without needing to prove it or put it nice and neat into a structure or a system? What about the mothers who wake up every day and navigate communication that the world doesn't fully understand? What about the children who are showing us in real time that our current understanding of communication is incomplete? Why are their voices not the primary authority? Because lived experience carries a level of knowing that cannot be replicated through observation alone. You can study something, you can document it, you can even become knowledgeable about it, but there is a depth that only comes from being inside of it, from being in relationship with it, from being responsible for it. And that depth matters, because pick me, I have a whole business centered around Black girls navigating predominantly white experiences. I wanted to open that up to the brown experience, the Hispanic experience, but I do not navigate my life as a Hispanic person. I would only be in an observation or an outside looking in situation. So I said, and my business partner, we talked about expanding our business into that space once we were able to find someone who actually navigates that experience every day, because it wouldn't be fair to do anything else. So, if the people closest to the experience are not centered, that narrative can shift into something that reflects the interpreter more than the experience itself. And that's where I had to get very clear with myself, because this is not about discrediting anyone or dismissing the work that has been done, but it's about balance. It's about making sure that the voices of those who are living this are not overshadowed by those who are explaining it. It's about recognizing that expertise does not only come from research. It comes from relationship, it comes from proximity, and it comes from a lived experience. And if we're not careful, we will continue to create systems where people who are closest to the truth are farthest from the microphone. And that's not something I'm willing to be quiet about, because the conversation at its core is not about who can explain telepathy the best or who can explain telepathy through their filter so that people can understand. It's about who is willing to listen to it honestly. And those are not always the same people. So then we have to ask, what are we listening to? And that has brought me to my final realization, because after everything that I've experienced, everything that I've observed, and everything that I've had to discern, there was one thing I had to come back to, and that is truth.